Professor Link asked, does Johnson really know what the ladies like? This is a controversial one. Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00. Now, a lot of the major series, I've said it a few times now, but a lot of the major series that are here on the channel are kind of coming to their natural conclusions. The Mythos series came to its natural conclusion a short while ago, which was covering each entry into the novel The Halo Mythos from start to finish. That's come to its natural conclusion. The Armory series, notwithstanding the fact that we've got a new Brute shotgun on its way to Halo Infinite, which is the first actually new weapon that we've had in Halo Infinite in a long time. There's also a couple of other series that are coming to their natural conclusion, but I'm bringing some new series in. Now, one of those new series is today's video, which is a series called You Asked For It, which is basically a thread that I have dedicated on my Discord for you asking pretty much whatever lore question that you want for the Halo universe, and I'll do my damnedest to answer it. And I've already got a tasty array of questions that are lined up on the Discord. If you want to pitch your own question, I encourage you to go across to the Discord. The link is in the description down below. And there you can go to the You Asked For It channel and you can ask away. And this is kind of running in parallel with my Quora series, where you can go across to the 00 hub on Quora and ask a similar question over there. And again, I cover those in semi-regular videos here on YouTube and then break those down into shorts as well. So there's lots of different methods and means for me to better deliver content to you, which I think is kind of cool. In any case, all of that said and done, let's get into this video. You asked for it. So the first question we got here is from James, and he asked, what's the most oldest surviving UNSC ship? Now that's a very interesting question because there are still a lot of very old ships still in service with the UNSC. One of the Halcyon class cruisers, the Pillar of Autumn, of course is a very old design of ship, very over-engineered, but was still in service and then retrofitted to become the Pillar of Autumn, which its design pattern was then reverse engineered again, or rather recreated it again, to create the Autumn class cruisers that we see escorting the UNSC Infinity after the war. So that's kind of a design template of a much older ship being brought back into circulation due to just how well it performed during its service. But if we're really narrowing in on the oldest surviving UNSC ships that are still in service with the UNSC, really there is no competition. The Spirit of Fire is by far the oldest known operational ship. It was built in 2473 and it was originally a colony ship meant to colonize new colonies as the humans continued their Domus Diaspora, their expansion into the stars and the establishment of the inner and outer colonies. The Phoenix class colony vessels upon which the UNSC Spirit of Fire is based upon were among some of the first vessels to reach the stars and allowed humanity to settle colonies across the stars, eventually growing the human empire to the 800 worlds that we were aware of at the beginning of the Human Covenant War. The Spirit of Fire was actually refitted in 2521, where it was ultimately refitted into a ground assault support vessel. The Spirit of Fire then went on to participate in the Harvest campaign and other major engagements during the early Human Covenant War. After 2531, however, the Spirit of Fire went missing and was eventually declared lost with all hands, before re-emerging within the Halo universe after the close of the Human Covenant War at the Ark, no less, where they came in direct conflict with the leader of the Banished, Atriox. As of now, 2560 in the Halo universe, the Spirit of Fire is by far the oldest known operational ship within the UNSC, now having an operational lifespan of 87 years. The next question comes from Jimmy Rings, who asks, what is a food nipple? The food nipple is a personal feeding apparatus used by the grunts to deliver sustenance, liquid nutrients, and possibly even atmosphere-regulated hydration directly into their methane suits. Grunts are a methane-breathing species from the planet of Balaho. They're physically weak compared to many other Covenant species and frequently deployed in hostile environments, like oxygen-rich human spaces, which, while sustaining to life to humans, is utterly lethal to grunts. So they wear full-body methane environment suits. The food nipples are effectively a long tube dispenser with a nipple at one end to consume from, and contains a bubbling blue paste that the Ungoi find unappetizing but nutritious. Due to their lowly places within Covenant society, feeding at the food nipples is one of the Grunt's very few pleasures in life. The Covenant ultimately needed a simple method of feeding large quantities of Grunts due to the speed in which they reproduce to meet their basic needs for life, but without spending too much time, energy and resources on their comfort, again owing to their low place within the society. Next question comes from Spartan D83, who said, were all types of Mjolnir armor, such as Recon or CQB, made in the same project as the first set of armor, or were they made as a separate project later on? Project Mjolnir is an interesting project, developmentally speaking, but also from a canonical standpoint there are some inconsistencies. Mjolnir armor, and by extension the Spartans, were originally conceived as being entirely androgynous and indistinguishable from one another. All suits of Mjolnir powered assault armor were identical, there were no permutations. So as far as Recon and CQB are concerned, they just simply didn't exist. These permutations were retroactively applied to Mjolnir powered assault armor for customization purposes for the player, and then given a lore retcon to effectively slot them into the lore by suggesting that other external corporations and organizations got involved with Mjolnir's development and created their own variations and bespoke designs, as well as some interesting Wetworks and Skunkworks versions developed by the materials group themselves. Over time, this aspect of the lore has become the prominent aspect of the lore, basically suggesting that the materials group and numerous external contractors and organizations got involved with Project Mjolnir and created their own permutations and variations that were adopted into the Spartan program, particularly once the Spartan program became public, and more specifically when the Spartan 4s became public and the Gen 2 platform, being much more modular, was fielded. From these retroactive lore adaptations, it was then threaded into the lore that all of these earlier variants like Recon, CQB, EVA were all originally designed as slight variations of the original Mjolnir platform for different Spartans. Diving more into the lore, Mjolnir's development process was what was called a spiral development methodology. This basically meant that they would create a mainline mark or new edition of the armor that would be fielded, but then each respective platform of that new armor would have numerous testbed prototypes attached to the armor to be field tested alongside the standing components of the new mark. After an indeterminate amount of time of these testbed prototypes being fielded, the research data and testbed results would then be used to inform whether or not those particular upgrades would be integrated into the next mark or platform of Mjolnir and become staple aspects of the Mjolnir platform. All of these new integrations and developments would then be integrated into the new mark, it would be fielded, and again new testbed prototypes would be fielded on top. Alongside this, numerous technologies from the Mjolnir platform would have been reverse engineered and worked into other armor platforms across the United Nations Space Command, including ODST and Marine systems. SPI is another prime example. All of these would then be fielded and develop along their own separate development paths, and any innovations that were made in those regards that were particularly well received or had a good strategic value were then folded back into Project Mjolnir and integrated into the next platform of Mjolnir. So while the original intentions was that Mjolnir was supposed to be completely androgynous and identical from platform to platform, it eventually changed due to customization options for the player, and then retroactively slotted into the lore with further lore drops to mean that every permutation of Mjolnir was developed throughout Mjolnir's development process in its spiral development methodology. Dr. 101 asked, is there a lore reason as to why the thrusters were removed as an integrated feature from Mjolnir from Halo 5 to Halo Infinite? No. I know that's a bit of a short answer, but I really can't think of much more beyond that. The armor platforms that were being worn in Halo 4 and Halo 5 was the Gen 2 platform. The armor being worn in Halo Infinite is the Gen 3 platform. As to why the thrusters went from being integrated in the Gen 2 platform to effectively not being anywhere visible within the Gen 3 platform, is anyone's guess. It may be that it was just overlooked for gameplay purposes, just to keep the armor's silhouette a little cleaner and less complicated, make it more tanky and more in keeping with the older style of Mjolnir. But from a canonical standpoint, the Gen 3 platform does have the thruster pack still integrated into the back of the armor. We just never see them actually in-game, which I believe is the question. Why was it removed effectively from Halo 5 to Halo Infinite? That they're game-based, they're game decisions as opposed to lore decisions. It's quite clearly covered in the Shadows of Reach that the Gen 3 platform does have thrusters in them. We just don't see them in Halo Infinite for reasons. Jinksmercury asks, how effective is Gen 3 integrated active camouflage? So the Gen 3 platform actually has a passive camouflage system granted by nanofilament adaptive coatings. This is covered in the Shadows of Reach. We never see its functionality in game, but it's described as effectively allowing the armor to adjust how it appears on the surface, slightly adjusting its hue, saturation and apparent texture to blend in with its surrounding environment, making the silhouette of the Spartan much harder to define. At a distance and in low light levels, it's extraordinarily good at blending the Spartan into the surrounding environment, as long as they're not stood on a high contrast area like walking along the ridge with clearly demarked differences between landscape and the sky behind them. But doing this is something that even modern military soldiers are taught not to do, because you're silhouetted against a bright sky. It's very easy to see where you are. So it stands to reason the Spartans just wouldn't do that. However, the camouflage systems do increase Mjolnir's heat output by 2%. So if the enemies are using optics that allow them to see infrared or heat signatures, Mjolnir may be glowing against the background due to this 2% heat increase. LDSG A Team asked how much Forerunner tech as opposed to Covenant tech has been reverse engineered by the UNSC. Broadly speaking, most of the technology that's been reverse engineered by the UNSC that is Forerunner in origin has been integrated almost exclusively into the UNSC ships or into Mjolnir. There are very little instances of Forerunner tech appearing more or less anywhere else. Examples of this are atmosphere encapsulating energy fields used on the hangar bay doors of UNSC ships, so the hangar bay doors can be open when in space, but not then necessitate the need for the hangar bay to vent its atmosphere, so crews and soldiers and maintenance personnel can continue to work within the hangar bay even while the hangar bay doors are wide open. Large format energy shields that encapsulate many of the new UNSC battleships of the line, particularly the UNSC Infinity and the Autumn class heavy cruisers. They all have integrated energy shields now. Some slipspace systems and engines have been adapted on UNSC ships and integrated to allow faster slipspace travel and faster impulse drives, meaning that even at sublight speeds, UNSC ships are now much faster. Communications gear that are much more enhanced, including slipspace communication gear, enabling UNSC ships to communicate with each other even while they are in slipspace, which was something that the UNSC did not have the capability of doing before, which has actually revolutionized UNSC battle movements during engagements, owing mainly to the fact that they can now coordinate where they will drop out of slipspace almost to the atom and almost to the second, while also coordinating exactly how they're going to engage the enemy fleet upon their exit from slipspace, with as close to live updates from the ships that are already there as it's possible to get. UNSC ships also have orbital scanners that enable them to completely map a planet's surface to an immensely high fidelity, allowing very rapid reconnaissance, and thus the deployment of troops are done with enhanced Force Recon intel, alongside dozens of other more discreet innovations gained from Forerunner technology. In regards to Mjolnir, things like the quantum translocator, enhanced energy shield systems, slipspace mediation systems allowing Mjolnir to transition from slipspace into normal space without killing the occupant, thruster systems, hard light shields, and various other upgrades and attachments that are now used across the Gen 2 and Gen 3 platforms. Phooodisgoood asked, will all Spartans just be Spartan 4s from now on? The program has upgraded along the way, so do you think it will all be kept under the Spartan 4 banner? If the Spartan 5 program is ever spun up, what would be the key changes that would differentiate them from the 4s? As far as we can tell, most Spartans that are enlisted now into the Spartan program will be defined as Spartan 4s, mainly due to their augmentation sets. The augmentation sets of the Spartan 4s can now be given to fully grown consenting adults, as opposed to having to be performed on recently post-pubescent adolescent teens, meaning it sidesteps a lot of the moral concerns of the earlier Spartan programs. Continued micro-innovations may be made to the Spartan augmentation sets, which will continue to refine the augmentations over time, perhaps increasing the raw power of these augmentations over time. But really, the next time that the Spartans are defined as anything other than Spartan 4s will be if there is a large jump or leap in the augmentation sets that are able to be delivered to fully grown consenting adults or otherwise. This jump in the augmentation sets will then redefine any Spartan given those augmentation sets from that point onwards as being Spartan 5s, unless children of Spartan 2s, 3s or 4s reach the age that they want to enlist and become Spartans as well, and if they, having already partially inherited some of the genetic alterations and enhancements that their parents would have undergone during their augmentation procedures, if they receive the Spartan 4 augmentation procedures, it may have much more pronounced results than that of the Spartan 4s, defining them as a new class of Spartans. Now, whether they will be called the Spartan 4.2s, or if they'll be reclassified entirely to Spartan 5s, that whether they'll just be given a new categorization is entirely unknown at this point. I have, however, made a lore video on my own ideas on what could be the next steps for the Spartan 5 augmentation procedures, which I'll link down below. Professor Link asked, does Johnson really know what the ladies like? This is a controversial one. No. No, he doesn't. There is only one incident where Johnson's interactions with a woman have been observed canonically, and that is in the book Contact Harvest, where at the very end of that book there is a very brief sex scene between himself and an Oni agent by the name of Gillian Alsigny. And by brief, I mean exactly what you think I mean. It didn't last long. Yes, he went for a second round, so to speak, but initially, no. He finished pretty quick.
Oh, I know what the ladies like.
The only one that was happy with that was him. And even he was disappointed himself. So no, he doesn't know what the ladies like. Maz S317 asked, do we know of any Spartans that have an affinity with vehicle combat such as main battle tanks or aircraft? We don't know of any specifically, but there are likely a lot of Spartans that have a particular affinity or talent when it comes to vehicles or aircraft. Most Spartans, or more prominently Spartan 2s and Spartan 3s, are trained to operate almost all UNSC vehicles currently in service. Spartan 4s less so, but it stands to reason there will be Spartans of all classes whom just have a talent, a flair or a knack with certain vehicles and can make them do things that other Spartans just can't. Jinksmercury asked, is Chips Dubbo a Spartan 4 now? Don't know. No information on it whatsoever. It'd be cool if he was, but I have no idea. Saratoga, or Saratoga 5, apologies if I mispronounced that, asked, were there any other AIs made from a copy of someone's brain, or was it just Cortana? All AIs in service with the UNSC are broken down into two categories, dumb AI and smart AI. All dumb AI are the AIs like we have with like ChatGPT and things like that. It's all programming, it's clever, they're brilliant in their own way, they have like superior to human intelligence in very narrow band aspects, but they are just programming. All smart AIs are made through a process called cognitive impression modeling. In order to create a smart AI, a brain of a recently deceased donor is put into the cognitive impression modeling system, where then the neurological and ion density matrices within the neural pathways are mapped and used as a template for the superconducting crystalline matrix within the AI's data core. This process destroys the original brain. So in that regard, every single smart AI ever created is made from a copy of someone's brain. However, I think what you mean is, are there any other AIs made from a clone of someone's brain, such as the case with Cortana being made from a clone of Dr. Halsey's brain? And the answer to that question is yes. And at the moment, they're all from clones of Dr. Halsey's brain. All other smart AIs have been made from the brains of recently deceased donors. However, Dr. Halsey made 7 clones of herself that favoured neurological development and sacrificed physical development. Mainly, she basically grew clones of herself, 7 clones of herself, which she then harvested the brains of all of them for the use with cognitive impression modelling. She then used those donor brains to create artificial intelligences, and due to the fact that she used some of those brains to create artificial intelligences, and they were living brains, that seems to have created artificial intelligences that are superior to other AIs. But it could also be that Dr. Halsey is the most intelligent and brilliant mind of the 26th century, and thus that may be playing into why the AIs made from her brain are that much better and superior to other AIs. Currently there are 3 AIs that we know of that are made from the cloned brain of Dr. Halsey, plus a 4th that not many know about. The first one that everyone knows about is Cortana. The next one that most people know about is Cortana's replacement, the weapon. The next one that not as many people know about is the AI Kalmaya, Cortana's older sister, that Halsey used extensively when she was in her lab on Reach. The final one was done in an experiment where Halsey planned to put an AI core matrix into a slipspace fractal probe and launch it into slipspace to see if the development of the AI core was limited by physical or temporal space, and thus putting it into slipspace, which is itself a hyperdimension, allowed the AI to grow unencumbered and thus defy the 7-year lifespan. This experiment yielded an AI that initially grew completely and utterly as expected, but then exponentially grew out of control. It then began speaking of entities in the void that it could sense and was conversing with. It then began rambling about the downfall of humanity, and then went on to rambling about basically nothing, just nonsense that couldn't be interpreted. And at this point, Halsey got scared, severed the connection, and just hoped that that AI perished. We don't know that it did, and it's entirely possible that AI is still out there existing in slipspace outside of the normal boundaries of time and space. Due to being in that ultimate slipspace dimension, it's entirely possible that that AI may now exist outside of the normal linear timeline that we're all accustomed to, which means it could exist in a time far back in our past, or infinitely far in our future, or indeed could exist in completely different realms altogether, even parallel universes. It remains to be seen if anything really comes of that. And that's, to start with, a few questions answered for this new series. You asked for it. Again, if you want to ask questions that you want me to answer, there's still loads on there at the moment that I'm going to work my way through. But if you want to ask questions, pop across to the Discord in the link down below and ask away, and I will eventually get to them. If you enjoyed this video and you're looking forward to other videos, particularly the questions I asked you at the start about whether or not you want me to cover armory videos in a different way and a few other things regarding content going forward, pop your comments down below. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. And until next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, kindly tap that like button, and if you're not already subscribed and want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Pop a comment down below telling me what you thought of today's video, or if you want me to cover something specific in the near future. I want to take this opportunity to thank and give shoutouts to my patrons and YouTube supporters: Spartan 10148, my singular contender class Ancilla, the triumvirate of minds within my installations Metarch, Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, my 7 installation monitors Sophia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan 1029, Chris, Orion and Shane, the crush of sub-monitors Legion, Ryan, Lebrat, Spartan 0137, Element 0, J3, Cult, Evermore's, Personal Devil, Scion Esports, Phantasma, Ashton and 191 Shaken Lightbulb, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, my most loyal of Enforcers, and every single one of the awesome people supporting the channel over on Patreon. My Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members Spartan 137, again, Maury, Jimbo and Balaz, and all other YouTube members keeping my installation functional on that glorious vacuum energy. I cannot thank you all enough. Shout out to John because... And if you like what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel on one of the support links in the description to net yourself some tasty merch and help keep the channel going. Take it easy, everyone, and find peace in the domain.